After a trip to London in June 1937, Prime Minister Mackenzie King visited Hitler. He told the dictator Canada would stand by Britain and said he was reassured. Privately, he is said to have described Hitler as a simple sort of peasant, not very intelligent, and no serious danger to anyone. Her pride that winter of 1939 were the Smoke Eaters from Trail, BC. They won 29 straight hockey games in Europe to win the amateur championship of the world. 7 of these games were played in Nazi Germany. In the crisp, clean air of Bavaria, it was difficult to conceive of the bestiality that lay around. There were 4,000 airmen sharing 270 aircraft, many of them antiquated. In Canada, leave was cancelled, the War Measures Act revived, the militia called out. The government announced a state of apprehended war. On September 7th, Parliament was called to decide. There was no doubt what that decision would be. There was no need for a recorded vote. Parliament asked the King to speak for Canada.
His Majesty has just proclaimed that a state of war with the German Reich exists as of tonight, September 10th, 1939.
Canada had a silent partner. As in neutral, the U.S. could not fly warplanes into Canada, but they could land them within inches of the Alberta border. The aircraft were welcome. The RCAF had doubled to 8,000 men, and it was proposed that Canada be the training depot for the whole Commonwealth.
The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, in addition to a rapid and extensive increase in the air training programs of each of the 3 dominions, visualizes joint training in Canada in the more advanced stages of pupils from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. The undertaking is one of great magnitude. It will establish Canada as one of the greatest air training centers in the world.
Others got ready for war in the air. The British Commonwealth was training in Canada. Only 6 months before, it had been an ambitious plan. It was now an amazing fact. Canadians, West Indians, Australians, New Zealanders, and the British filled one new Canadian base after another. Before the paint was dry, the first pilots were there. The Tiger Moths were old, and the men were very young, and only a few of the instructors were pretty.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
It began in late July, in the bright blue summer sky. A new and secret weapon, radar, gave precious minutes of warning. Outnumbered 3 to 1 were the 1,000 Allied fighter pilots. Some 110 of these famous few were Canadians. On August 15th, No. 1 Canadian Fighter Squadron became the first unit of the Royal Canadian Air Force ever to engage in combat. By September, the situation was critical. Then on September 7th, Goering diverted his Luftwaffe to the city of London itself. On September 15th, the Battle of Britain reached crescendo. 500 Nazi bombers came. Goering had blundered. The RAF could now concentrate on the patch of sky over London. In 1 hour, it had been decided. 56 Nazi bombers had fallen. The scale had tipped. There would be great devastation. The bombers kept coming, but only in darkness now and with crippling losses. Overseas, Canadian airmen were flying the lumbering Wellington bomber. Ground crews lovingly patched up their wimpies each day, for it was only in the air the Allies could take the offensive. This early bombing was strategically ineffective, but psychologically imperative. It showed the German he too was vulnerable. This was not the air war of 1418, of Bishop and Barker and Collishaw, of dashing lone wolves in open cockpits. These men fought as darkly confined team, dependent on one another for life itself.
On the ball, boys, it's going to be bloody hot. We feel the heat. Don't waste time, Johnny. It's getting warmer. Okay, Skip. Keep her steady. Did you get rid of them all, Johnny? All gone, Skip. Take me home.
During this war, 17,000 of these RCAF flyers will die. The ground crews would count them coming back. They knew that even those who made it might have a dead man at one of the guns. States.
Thank you. This is Bob Camp, Borden Hope. I don't have to tell you, I'm very thrilled being here. This wonderful camp of yours. Devil's Island with sand. It's very beautiful. No, I really mean it. No, I'm just kidding when I say that I think it's a beautiful little spot compared to some of the places we've been, and we've been to a few camps in our day. Yes, sir. I've played so many camps I can't drink that regular coffee anymore. Crosby was going to be here, but he had a little accident. One of his horses was dying, and it's the first chance he ever had to see one of them finished, so he thought he'd just wait.
In Roosevelt's words, Canada was the airdrome of democracy. The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan had 97 schools in Canada. Here, 70,000 Canadians and 60,000 other British subjects would win their wings. The camps themselves were pretty dreary and needed the occasional movie star to dust a puff of glamour. In offices high over the factories, Canadian engineers are studying a top-secret set of blueprints, just arrived from England. These are the specifications for one of the most effective engines of air war ever produced, the fabled Lancaster night bomber. Canada, with the know-how, the materials, the manpower, is asked to mass produce this plane. In a fantastic 18 months, Canadians will make and assemble most of the 26,000 intricate parts that make up each of the bombers. There is a bridge to England. RAF Ferry Command flies new aircraft to the active theaters of war. Canadian bush pilots, airline pilots. There are many of these older hands in Ferry Command. If they lack the piercing vision and trip hammer reflexes of the teenage fighter pilot, they have the endurance, the nerve, and the savvy to get planes across the Atlantic. Had Billy Bishop, but he belonged to 1917. Now they found a fresh young idol, and they brought him home from Malta. Buzz Bierling from Verdun, Quebec. In his Spitfire over the Mediterranean, he had destroyed 27 enemy planes. Every Canadian knew he liked chocolate cake and butterscotch pie, that he drank orange juice before he fought, and that he made no friends. Montgomery struck out at Rommel from Alamein. In 2 weeks, his 8th Army had split Rommel's forces and sent them in full retreat across the North African desert. In Hurricanes and Spitfires, Canadian pilots, they raked the enemy as he ran to the west. In Berlin, Joseph Goebbels is trying to celebrate a Nazi anniversary, but there are visitors.
Aus ihren Kehlen emporsteigen, vor dem der Feind erblassen wird.
A raid of little military significance, but Goebbels, the propaganda master, must have admired the touch. The end of the beginning. But still much fighting ahead, and a new formation to help. On New Year's Day, 43, 8 RCAF squadrons came together as number 6 bomber group. The days of hit and miss were ending. New techniques, new instruments, new explosives, new planes had made it a precise, if still dangerous, art. It was now practiced almost every night, with the Canadians of 6 Group and the Pathfinder Squadron in the thick of the raids. They called this their milk run, and this, the Happy Valley. It was the Ruhr, industrial heart of Germany.
Alarm! Achtung! Feuer! Feuer!
worked silently in the crashing sky, each expert at his job. Now the intercom silence could be broken.
Skipper to nav. Give us a heading, Charlie. Heading south 180. Roger, Dodger, Charlie. Okay, boys, let's get the hell out of here.
Germany blazed below. The bombers turned from the dawn. They fought a strange and nervy war, these flying men. Each morning they would try to shake the sickening knowledge that some were not there. Through the day they would unwind in the lovely rolling country of North England. Then towards evening, the nerves would draw tight again. One summer night in '43, they got ready for a single target of vital significance, Peenemünde on the Baltic. Intelligence had revealed a testing station for two strange and secret weapons. The buzz bomb and the rocket, V1 and V2. In 45 minutes, 525 heavy bombers set back production a crucial 2 months. Other targets house a far from secret weapon. The U-boat pens at Brest, Lorient, and Saint-Nazaire. The Canadians went in here too, but with little success. There was no explosive that could dent the 12 feet of concrete protecting the German submarine. This menace must be met and beaten at sea. Canada was now responsible for the Northwest Atlantic. Destroyers flew the black hunting pennant of the sub-killer. Aircraft carriers were improvised and sailed with the convoys. Shore-based Cansos had increased their range. During May and June, 54 U-boats were killed in the Atlantic. In early June, the Nazi wolf pack suddenly and dramatically withdrew from the battle. Just getting a start in his hometown of Montreal was a young man named Oscar Peterson. If Peterson in those days appealed only to a small clutch of jazz buffs, there was a rising continental hysteria building around the voice.
But I would not dare. I'm so afraid that you may vanish in the air. On, got my Sunday best, going to the barn dance tonight.
The aim at last is Fortress Europe and a foothold on the southern tip of Sicily. The British 8th Army will land on the right. The Americans will land on the left. The untried Canadian 1st Division will land in the center. The Canadians must fight uphill. But they had allies above the German. The British, Americans, and Canadians controlled the Sicilian sky. In Canada, Quebec is host to the leaders of the West. For the first time, they meet while their troops fight on enemy soil. Sicily is theirs, and now mainland Europe must be next. At the meeting's end, President Roosevelt comes to Ottawa.
Today, in devout gratitude, we are celebrating the brilliant victory won by British and Canadian and American fighting men in Sicily.
In Britain, Canadian bomber pilots are briefed by Johnny Fauquier, their great pathfinder.
Our target tonight, Berlin. Germany is groggy and reeling. If you put the same effort into this attack tonight as you did into Hamburg, and you smashed Hamburg, you'll deal the enemy a blow from which they may well find it impossible to recover. Remember, bomb aimers, the pilots are depending on you to take them right into the aiming point. Now, it's up to you, men. Good luck to you, and off you go.
The RCAF was now big, powerful, and experienced, a potent segment of the Allied air forces. The great softening up for the second front had begun. First, the heavy bombers flew into the Prussian heartland. Canadians study the fjords of Norway. Supply to Germany must be cut off. German coastal shipping must be immobilized. The German Air Force must be destroyed. They refuse to meet the Allies in the air. They are attacked on the ground. When the German came up in desperate self-defense, he was destroyed in the sky. Now came the time for precision bombing. The invasion plans had been laid. The Allies knew where they would land their armies. The Air Force must knock out all German lines of transport that lead to that future battlefield. Railways, canals, roads, bridges. Attack anything that moves. Throttle the German supply lines that lead to the Norman coast. The date of the invasion has been set, and it is not far off. Occupied France was half paralyzed. Britain was a sea of movement. The greatest concentration of armament the world has ever seen moved south through England to the Channel coast. Among the chosen for this titanic venture were 14,000 soldiers of the 3rd Canadian Division. They had never fought before. The man they would attack was the most famous of the German generals. He was confident he could meet the Allies on the beaches and throw them back into the sea. His men trusted him when he said that this would be another Dieppe. Two British divisions, 2 American divisions, and the chosen Canadian division climbed into the waiting armada with their eyes on the French horizon. In the late afternoon, 3 divisions of paratroopers blackened their faces. Among them is a Canadian battalion. They climbed aboard in the gathering darkness and flew into D-Day. It took 2,172 days to win the Second World War, and the 6th of June, 1944, may be the best remembered. In the Great Sea Force were 110 ships of the Canadian Navy. The RAF, with 33 Canadian squadrons, had worked through the night. Now the U.S. Air Force used the sky. Strangely, the fear was evaporating. The terrible waiting was over. There was nothing left to do but go and fight. For some Allied warriors, it was a short, tragic day. But the momentum was irresistible. The Canadians turned for the beaches. For the second time in a quarter century, Canadians fight on the soil of France. 1,000 lie dead and wounded. But they have snatched a 5-mile beachhead. The day is won. The news is good.
Correspondence. They say that Canadian, American, and British troops landed on the Normandy coast in northern France. One report indicates that the Canadians may be among the troops fighting tonight at Caen, but the report isn't confirmed.
The Canadians are not in Caen, but they have made the greatest Allied penetration of the day. Their beach, called Juno, is one of 5 along a 20-mile front. Since D+4, RCAF fighter squadrons have been operating from the windy beaches of Normandy. By June 28th, they can send out 50 Spitfires to coax a reluctant Luftwaffe into the sky. "26 enemy fighters have been dropped on the flames of Normandy. For Canadian fighter squadrons, it is the biggest day of the war.
Back on deck, we figured on a little party. That night, by actual count, we drank 6 times to Billy Bishop, 5 times to the Vickers Aircraft Company, and we even toasted Margaret Rose.
On July 5th, Montgomery ordered the British and Canadians to take their city. This was Caen, only 10 miles from the sea, but tenaciously defended. The few remaining civilians would be warned by leaflets that would be followed by bombs. On July 9th, what was left of Caen was liberated. There was news that 5 miles away, important ground had been hard won. The airfield at Carpiquet had been a bloody victory, and there was work to be done to make it useful. And the RCAF and British Typhoon squadrons strike furiously at the enemy ahead. The Allied air forces controlled the sky. cloud of decay hung heavy on the hot summer air. The last river would now be crossed, and the Navy came overland with the boats. And the Air Force came in with rockets and bombs. On the night of March 22nd, the signal went out. The lower Rhine had been crossed. As day broke in England, a fleet made ready. Two grim airborne divisions, including the Canadian Paratroop Battalion, struck out for Germany. They dropped deep behind the Rhine, fought desperately, and sealed the German fate. More than 1 million men in uniform had gone to war voluntarily, and now they wanted to go back to peace. A lot of them didn't even pick up their medals. They cleaned up their vocabulary and hurried out to the choice of worlds that was waiting. For those whose bodies still carried the wounds of war, they were the best of specialists to assist most of them back into an active life. When they were ready, they could, if they wished, join the veterans busy learning a new trade of their choice, vocational schools, or perhaps an undreamed of opportunity for a higher education. The land they returned to was a land where men could make their way, and where women could be women once again. The return of the nylon stocking shook the nation. One by one, wartime controls and restrictions were lifted. And to one long squeal of delight, the good old days were back, and they were better than ever. For the men, there were tires, gas, and the first new car in 3 years. Six years of war, and 2,000 Canadians had gone to die in oil, fire, and ice on the sea. Six years of war, and 17,000 Canadians had gone to die suddenly in the open sky. Six years of war, and 23,000 Canadians had gone to die on the shuddering earth.